Hong Kong with little damage. Squatters refuse to leave Lei Yumon. And Amnesty International stages a protest in China.
Good evening. Typhoon Kent has started to move away from the territory. It is currently centred about 100 kilometres north-northwest of Hong Kong and is moving west-northwest at 24 kilometres per hour. Everyone should stay indoors and take precautions against typhoon damage, as the Royal Observatory doesn't predict any immediate let-up. The schools will remain closed tomorrow. The Royal Observatory had been warning that a direct hit from Typhoon Kent could have been very damaging. But the storm has just missed Hong Kong, despite continuing to lash the territory with gale-force winds and heavy rains.
As the circulation of Kent is still quite extensive, we expect that the gale-force winds will persist during the overnight period.
On the ground, Kent has already caused major disruption. People were at work by the time the signals were raised, and many of them had difficulties getting home. Transport is still severely affected. Nearly all boats have dropped anchor. On what's supposed to be dry land, the MTR is now running at 8-minute intervals, while the KCR is on a frequency of 10 minutes. The Two Moon Road has once again been closed. The government says the same section where a boulder fell and killed a man between Wang Chu Road and Sanjiang will be shut until further notice. All bus routes apart from those going to the MTR and airport have been cancelled. International travellers also had problems. Kai Tak reports 78 flights have been delayed, 22 cancelled and 4 diverted. And the Royal Observatory doesn't expect the situation to improve much in the immediate future. Strong winds can be expected throughout the night and heavy rains for the next couple of days.
And as Morland said, after the number 8 signal went up, hundreds of people had problems getting home. In Kowloon, the crowds built up especially in industrial areas as factory workers left work. In some districts, the police were out to keep everything in order. Bus queues lined the streets of Kuntong as workers emptied out of the factories. Sai-Kung-bound passengers had the longest wait. People snaked around the bus terminus. At Tsim Sha Tsui, white-collar workers piled onto the buses to go home. The police were out to make sure no one gets hurt in the mad rush. In the MTR stations, the crowds packed the platforms. At Admiralty, the gates had to be closed temporarily to ease the build-up. There was heavy congestion all over town, the most serious along Gloucester Road in Wan Chai. Traffic there almost came to a standstill.
Meanwhile, many Discovery Bay residents have difficulty getting home because the ferry service stopped earlier than they expected. Yolanda Choi has more on that story.
Streets in Central were congested with people rushing to get home, and in some cases, some never made it. Ferry services to Hong Kong and to Discovery Bay stopped an hour after the number 8 signal was hoisted. Stranded in Hong Kong, these Discovery Bay residents are angry because they say ferry services usually close 2 hours after signal 8 is hoisted. Now they have no way of getting home.
And within an hour, half an hour, the ferries had stopped. And this is what's annoying most people. And there's conflicting reports on the radio saying the ferries are still running. So people are still coming down here assuming they're going to get a ferry home.
This woman says she has young kids at home and they need to drink milk. We don't even know when the number 8 signal will be lowered. A spokesman for the Discovery Bay ferry services says they stopped the ferries earlier than usual because Typhoon Kent approached Hong Kong very quickly. After 2 hours of waiting, residents of Discovery Bay finally left the terminal. Some went to stay with friends, others checked in at hotels. Both minibus and taxi queues were long. Some commuters had no other choice but to wait.
I've been waiting in Central for 2.5 hours, so I've been trying to get home, but I can't get anywhere. I've been waiting in this line for about an hour.
It's impossible to get a taxi anywhere, and the taxi drivers are charging more than they should be. They're charging like $100 just for a short trip.
A few hours later, traffic was flowing pretty smoothly, probably because most people finally made it home. Yolanda Choi, TVB News.
Over 30 squatters in Lei Yumon are refusing to leave their homes near hurts, even though the government says the area is in danger of mudslides. Residents are angry that they've been offered resettlement in old housing estates which are too far away. And Susan Chang is out there at Lei Yunmun. Susan, how's it?
Jenny, nothing seems to be able to convince these residents to evacuate. The community here has decided to stick together, and they say they'd rather take their chances than accept what they call are unsatisfactory alternatives provided by the government.
Shortly after the number 8 signal was hoisted, a tree and a fence were the first to fall victim to the battering of Tropical Storm Kent. But the people living in the squatter area in Lei Yunmun refused to relent. Earlier this month, Tropical Storm Helen triggered several landslides, and the government tried to move the residents to public housing estates. But the squatters refused to go. They say the government is trying to place them in rundown old buildings that are over 20 years old. The authorities have set up 7 temporary shelters in Kumtong, but the squatters refused to leave, even for the duration of the storm. District officers came to try to convince them to move, but to no avail. This man said he'll be ready for the storm as soon as he makes his roof watertight. But a few of the squatters who aren't quite as fearless about the destructive powers of Mother Nature have decided to take temporary refuge at their relatives, but vow they'll be back as soon as the storm passes.
At a school here, there's a sign-up sheet for those who want to be moved to temporary shelter. So far, there are no names on the list. Residents here say they don't think the conditions will get any worse, but if it does, they may be forced to accept temporary shelter. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Susan. A slope in Taiwan has not yet been strengthened following a landslide there 3 weeks ago. One person was buried then, and now people living nearby are worried that there will be a repeat of the disaster. Work to make safe the slope along Feichou Road has begun, but it's far from completed. Mud and water have been trickling down all day. The caretaker of a church nearby could do little except stare at the potential danger ahead. A section of the road remains closed, but some taxi drivers ignore the peril for convenience sake. The Highways Department has no set date on when the road can be opened again. A spokesman says that depends on the progress of construction work.
In the new territories, farmers are worried that the strong winds and rain will destroy their crops. In low-lying areas such as Seongsoi, villagers have piled up their belongings to prevent them being soaked in case of flooding. The farmers have been securing implements since this morning, so they won't be blown away. Typhoon Kent also caused problems in Macau. Many Hong Kong residents were stranded there when ferry services stopped this afternoon.
Office workers crowded onto buses soon after the number 8 signal was hoisted at 2 o'clock in Macau. The bridge to Taipa was shut and there were traffic jams around the enclave. The slippery roads were blamed for an accident in which one person was injured when a van collided with a taxi. At the ferry pier, Hong Kong passengers who missed the last boat loitered aimlessly. Some were trying to think of other ways to return home.
But if I find that they are not in a position to depart, then I might have to take the land route. Might have to go to Zhuhai and then to Shenzhen and then to Hong Kong.
The management of the pier promises to take the travellers back to Hong Kong as soon as possible, but it's not clear when the ferries can set sail again. And now on to other news. There's been a challenge to China's attempt to limit freedom of expression at the International Women's Forum near Beijing. Amnesty International today staged a protest against human rights violations, including persecution in China. Deborah Khan reports from Beijing.
The mood was peaceful, but their message a strong one. Around 200 women gathered at the steps of Wairo International Conference Center, some calling for the release of political prisoners around the world.
We're trying to make 2 points. One is that don't forget the victims who are at the heart of what this conference should be about. And we're starting to sign petitions which are going to be delivered to the relevant embassies at the end of the NGO forum. So we're trying to highlight what's happened to women and generate political pressure for releases, investigations, compensation.
One of those includes a mainland journalist who's being detained by China, accused of stealing state secrets.
The women who showed up here today say they have every right to get their message peacefully out.
that despite repeated warnings from the Chinese government, that protests must be confined to certain areas. A handful of Chinese police were on guard, paying close attention to the demonstrators. Beijing's vice mayor re-emphasized today, police will have to interfere if the demonstrators attack the Chinese government or any state leaders.
他不是针对，完全不是针对中国的就好办，他针对中国的不行，那有主权问题。
NGO forum organizers are seeking clarification from the Chinese government. They say the Chinese have no authority over the forum's sites because they've been temporarily handed over to the UN.
We look into it and we will take a very appropriate action as soon as possible, I can tell you that.
But as the question of how much power Beijing has over the forum lingers on, many of the women here believe their voices will be better heard on an upbeat note. Deborah Khan, TVB News, Beijing.
And still ahead in the news tonight, NATO says more airstrikes against Bosnian Serbs in the pipeline. In Tahiti, women protesters storm the French High Commission. And the annual tomato throwing fiesta in Spain.
After a hard day at work, it's time for a nice juicy steak. Oh no, you forgot to defrost. You need Miracle Thaw, the incredible new defrosting tray that perfectly thaws any frozen food like magic in just minutes. No chemicals, no batteries, no wires, no microwave rays. This thick frozen steak could take all day to defrost. But watch, simply place it on Miracle Thaw, and incredibly, in just 30 minutes, it's butcher block fresh. These rock-hard chicken breasts are moist and tender in only 13 minutes. That's frozen fish. 12 minutes later, it's the catch of the day. Frozen pork chops are thawed, cool, and juicy in just 14 minutes. The secret is in the superconductive metal tray. It absorbs the natural heat energy in the air and then releases it directly into the frozen food. Now you can defrost any frozen food just minutes before cooking. Watch this ice cube demonstration. The tray is cool to the touch, but the ice cube melts away like it was on a hot griddle. The Miracle Thaw defrosting tray simply speeds up the natural thawing process. Incredibly, the cube has melted down in just seconds. Amazing. All-day thawing could cause bacteria burgers, but with Miracle Thaw, burgers are safely defrosted in just 10 minutes. Microwave defrosting could ruin your food. You get dry, cooked edges, causing poor, stale flavor. But Miracle Thaw defrosts perfectly every time. Food retains the natural juices for the best flavor. Miracle Thaw. Instant defrosting, quick cleanup, easy storage.
Now you can have the amazing Miracle Thaw for the incredibly low introductory price of $198. It thaws any frozen food like magic in minutes. What's more, food retains the natural juices for best flavor. To order, call TV Media 255-60238. That's 255-60238. Call now. The Miracle Thaw. The incredible kitchen miracle you use every day. TV Media.
Welcome back. In the aftermath of the largest military operation in NATO's history, there are indications this evening of progress towards a Balkan peace plan. The Bosnian Serbs have agreed to form a joint peace team with Yugoslavia, effectively giving up independent negotiating rights. But as James Lejeune
commemoration took place on the deck of the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier Carl Vinson. We get details from ABC News.
The nuclear-powered aircraft carrier Carl Vinson has an 1,100-foot flight deck, an exciting challenge to fly off for the civilian pilots here with some 50-year-old World War II fighter planes. Bob Monahan flies the same kind of torpedo bomber former President George Bush was shot down in the Pacific.
We are a constant reminder to the younger generation that a tremendous amount happened 50 years ago. we're just trying to keep it alive.
First to lumber down the flight deck today was a 50-year-old Wildcat.
A real sense of nostalgia, taking you back, seeing machines that you maybe only saw before in black and white documentaries, and seeing that they are real, that they do fly.
The AT-6 was used as a trainer pilot during the war, while Waikiki resident Millie Marshall flew one as a member of the pioneering wartime Women's Army Service.
I would never have been able to fly those airplanes in civilian life, even though I was a civilian. We were in the military. So yes, I just feel very fortunate to have been able to have been a part of the WASP program.
After a parade of takeoffs by the old-timers, the Navy showed off the modern way to take off. F-18C Hornets taking off by catapult. Then a flyby with a World War II Corsair flanked by two modern Hornets. President Clinton will lay a wreath on the Carl Vinson as part of the VJ Day commemoration. Today, as the ship pulled into Pearl Harbor, the crew rendered honors at the Arizona Memorial. A solemn salute to battles of the past that will be respectfully remembered and honored this weekend.
And there's no Mark 6 lottery draw tonight because of the typhoon. Lottery draw number 69 will be postponed to next Tuesday, and entries placed today will remain valid. And now over to sports, Morland.
Thanks, Jenny. We start with tennis tonight, and fifth seed Michael Chang has breezed through to the second round of the US Open. He took just 63 minutes to beat his first round opponent, Gianluca Pozzi. Chang won the match 6-love, 6-1, 6-love. In other action, fourth seed Boris Becker became the first player to book a place in the third round. He beat Carsten Ariens 6-1, 6-3, 7-5 to set up a clash against Jason Stoltenberg. Brazilian football club Grêmio have won the South America's Libertadores.
Hello everybody, Superman has arrived. This time he's not so constructive though. Typhoon Kent brought gale force winds and heavy rain, as well as lowering temperatures to the range of 25.8 to 31 degrees, while relative humidity maintained in the range of 64 to 90%. At 8 p.m. update was 26 degrees and the humidity at 89%. And there's been 60.4 millimeters of rainfall recorded at the World Observatory so far. And here's Freddie with tonight and tomorrow's forecast. Overcast with continuous rain, heavy and thundery at times, expecting a range of 24 to 29 degrees. Southwesterly gale force winds will subside gradually tomorrow. Outlook for the weekend, cloudy and rainy. And today's API range from 61 to 75. This will drop tomorrow from 30 to 40. On the general situation chart, we see that Typhoon Kent was centered about 100 kilometers north-northwest of the Royal Observatory in Hong Kong, and is forecast to move west-northwest at 24 kilometers per hour. Weather conditions in other parts of the world. Beijing and Shanghai will also have thunderstorms, so fog, and Tokyo and Taipei occasional rain. There are showers in Guangzhou and Macau, thunderstorms in Manila, Singapore, and rain in Bangkok. Kuala Lumpur expects heavy rain, Jakarta overcast skies, Sydney and Melbourne fair weather, and Auckland scattered showers. Skies are cloudy for Vancouver, New York, and San Francisco. Stormy for Toronto and clear for Los Angeles. Showers are expected in Zurich, Frankfurt, and Amsterdam. Showers in London and rain for Paris. And thanks for tuning in for our weather report today. Stay tuned for the latest updates from Pearl here. From a very good night.